Welcome to another special edition episode of Granite Spirits Podcast. I'm your host, Laura Lynn, and we are looking at Taylor Swift's The Tortured Poets Department, the anthology. Specifically, this episode is going to be covering tracks 13, 14, and 15, which are I Can Do It With a Broken Heart, The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived, and The Alchemy. So without further ado, let's get started. So I Can Do It With a Broken Heart starts off with, I can read your mind, she's having the time of her life. There in her glittering prime, the lights refract sequin stars off her silhouette every night. I can show you lies. And it's so crazy how she starts it off like this super fun and magical way, and then she ends off this verse with the lies. And again, it's going into that dark space where everybody sees her as this joyful, bubbly kind of person, but she's really going through it underneath. And going to her birth chart, her Sagittarius sun is that joyful, bringing the spotlight kind of person that she puts on, but Scorpio being her midheaven, which is directly related to career, shows that there's always something under the surface, that there's so many levels to her. And I think that we can just see that throughout her different albums. Every single album shows a different side of her, and it's just really beautiful to see. But what's so crazy, and I've said this in other episodes, but that when watching the Eras Tour on Disney Plus, I didn't actually go, but I'm sure if you actually went, you could feel her energy. You can feel how happy she is to be there. And so I think that everybody would say, wow, she's really having the time of her life. I know I said that. I was like, wow, she's really embodying freedom. And then come to find out, all of these songs are about her feeling caged. So it's just, first of all, it's really crazy to what people say about anybody, that you never know what's hidden under a smile. That just reminds me of a song by Hilary Duff that I think it's called Underneath the Smile, where she's saying my world's slowly caving in, but all the while, okay, but so you know what I'm saying, everybody can just put on a fake smile, but you never know what someone's going through. You never know someone's story. So whether they're in the spotlight like Taylor Swift or they're your next door neighbor, you never know what somebody's going through. So it's always treat people with kindness. And even if they aren't going through anything, we should still treat them with kindness, right? So yeah. Okay, moving right along, because I'm a real tough kid. I can handle my shit. They said, babe, you gotta fake it till you make it, and I did. So with this part, it's interesting that she calls herself kid. So that's what I was saying in a previous episode, that she's still growing. She's gonna go through her second puberty soon, and I think that's why she still calls herself kid. She does it in a lot of songs in Midnight as well, and Folklore, now that I'm thinking about it, that she calls herself kid a lot of the time. And I think that goes back to track 6 of But Daddy, I Love Him, where she says a precocious child doesn't really grow up, because how could she? She was in the spotlight and everyone's telling her to stay the same. You have to save your good name, how we talked about last episode, that she's ready to grow up, but here she still feels like a kid that's getting heartbroken. And the teenage petulance line comes to mind in track 4, Down Low, that she still feels like this kind of breakup is like a teenage breakup, that it doesn't even feel like an adult relationship. So interesting with that word choice. But yeah, we always hear this, you gotta fake it till you make it. And so it's interesting that now this megastar is also citing this adage, I guess we could call it, the saying that we're always told. And I think it goes to show, even if you don't believe something, through repetition, it's going to manifest into reality until you actually do believe it. And so that's what she said here. Baby, you gotta fake it till you make it. And I did. Lights, camera, bitch, smile. Even when you wanna die. He said he'd love me all his life. But that life was too short. Breaking down, I hit the floor. All the pieces of me shattered as the crowd was chanting more. So it's like, so let's start from the beginning. So the lights, camera, bitch, smile, like, I don't know if she's trying to say it like derogatory, like how people, like paparazzi, like, hey, bitch, you better be smiling. Or she's saying it in a way like, yes, bitch, like how Britney Spears says, work, bitch, kind of thing. But either way, it's saying like she's in the spotlight where she doesn't really have a choice but to smile, especially when this tour has been in production for years, probably before the breakup. Where as long as she was going to cancel this whole thing for a breakup. So yeah, she had to put a smile on, right? Even when you want to die. So again, with that dark imagery. And then he said he loved me all his life, like we talked about in track 12. But that life was too short, also from track 12. Breaking down, I hit the floor. This is very reminiscent of Down Low. Like, I might just stay down here, because all the pieces of me shattered. So this is like that part about like fixing herself. So from track 3, my boy only breaks his favorite toys. She's saying like she's completely shattered. She's completely broken. But the crowd is chanting more. And that's the thing about Swifties, that they love her, right? Like, obviously they'll defend her. They'll support her, whatever Taylor Swift puts out, Swifties will gobble it up. Right? But we don't see it as this like negative way too, where she had just released Midnights, then she released some Taylor's versions, and people were still asking for more, right? And then the anthology comes out, and there's rumors that there was going to be a third album that was going to drop on May 3rd. And so, like, people still, like, we got 31 songs. Like, look how long it's taken. I'm spending how many hours of my life looking at this stuff, right? And people still want more. So it's like, when will it be enough? Because us, quote unquote, normal people, we feel it with our goals in, like, everyday life. Like, oh, look, there's still always something that needs to get done. No matter how much you do, there's still more that needs to get done. So it's like, how do we draw these lines? How do we establish these boundaries with people in our lives? And so with Taylor Swift, like, her and her fans, like, she also needs to establish boundaries. And I think she didn't know how, like, because she was so young when she started, she didn't know how to establish those boundaries, which is why she had to retreat. That's why now she feels like the monster on the hill from the song Antihero. But I think it's just a matter of, like, establishing boundaries so that she can have a normal life. And that's why I think that now she's trying to experience that a little bit more. Now that she's dating Travis. But again, that's just speculation because I'm not in their relationship, clearly. Okay, I'm gonna keep going. I was grinning like I'm winning. I was hitting my marks because I can do it with a broken heart. So it's interesting that she talks about my marks, because she also talks about the marks in the manuscript. So, like, she's saying, like, everything is kind of like already planned, where she doesn't even have to think that whatever's happening, like, with her broken heart, it doesn't matter because she has to hit her mark. It's like if she's like a little puppet that she just has to get put into wherever it is. But one thing that I noted while watching the Eras tour was that it seemed like, and I'm sure it's true, that she wasn't thinking about Karma, the last song, when she was singing, let's say, Illicit Affairs, the first one that popped into my head. Like, she's not thinking, when she's singing that song, she's only thinking of that song. She doesn't have time to think about the heartache or to think about whatever. Like, she's in her little pod where these boundaries are kind of being established, where she can be in the moment of this song, so that no thought can come into her mind. No intrusive thought can wiggle its way in there, because she's hitting her mark. So she's grinning like she's winning, because even though all of this stuff is going on behind the scenes, when she's up there, she's doing her job. She's hitting her marks. And so I do think that she did enjoy herself, even with a broken heart. I'm so depressed, I act like it's my birthday every day. And I feel like that's the best way to beat depression, no? Like, you have to just pretend until it becomes reality, because when you're depressed, you don't want to do anything. You just want to stay in bed. And she talked about that a little bit in the last song, that like these phantoms are secondhand embarrassed because I can't get out of bed because something counterfeit's dead. So I think that this might have been like the best thing for her during this breakup, especially to someone that she was with for almost 6 years. This is cathartic, to say the least, but I think it's just about her having a good time and not having to think, and being able to enjoy the energy that the fans have, the energy of her dancers, the energy of the songs themselves, what they have. I'm so obsessed with him, but he avoids me like the plague. I cry a lot, but I am so productive. It's an art. So this is going into her birth chart, that she has her moon in Cancer. So already, Cancer moons are crybabies. And I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just like, it is what it is. And throughout this album and her other albums, she talks about crying a lot. But she's so productive, it's an art. And so she has this Cancer moon in her 5th house, which is the house of art, the house of expression, the house of productivity, I would even go as far to say. And not necessarily like in work productivity, like how you would see like in houses 6, 10. I'm just gonna leave it there, 6 and 10. But in the 5th house, it's the expression where you're working, you're being productive to be your best self, to channel your inner child, to create. You know you're good when you can even do it with a broken heart. I can hold my breath. I've been doing it since he left. I keep finding his things in drawers, crucial evidence. I didn't imagine the whole thing. And I circled that line because I think that's like the number one thing about a breakup, is that you don't know how the other person's feeling. And here she's like, I'm so obsessed with him, but he avoids me like the plague. That she wants some kind of closure. She wants to know why. She wants something to know that her feelings are valid. And so that's why here she's saying, like, keep finding his things in drawers. It's crucial evidence to know that I'm not crazy, that he really did love me, that he really did envision a life for us, but he just wasn't willing to grow anymore. And so I had to leave him. But it's during a breakup, it's like all these intrusive thoughts come, like, oh, he never really loved you. He was just playing you. He never really wanted to get married. He never really wanted to have kids. And it's just all these intrusive thoughts that Taylor's talking about here. So if she's saying, like, I just hold my breath. On my other podcast, it's called Ila Radio, ILA. And I talk about how holding my breath has allowed me to slow down. And sometimes, like, people say, like, oh, you have to do breath work where you have to, like, learn how to breathe. But I've learned that holding your breath is the only way to stop time. Especially when your mind is going a mile a minute. You hold your breath and everything just calms down, and you just repeat, slow down, until you actually do. So it kind of seems like that's what Taylor's doing here too. And it's interesting that she uses breath, whether she's doing my little technique or not. Breath is associated with air. Air would be Libra, Gemini, and Aquarius. And so if she really is an Aquarius rising, as I'm saying that she is, it would make sense for that as well. I'm sure I can pass this test is how that verse ends. But it's interesting that she sees this breakup as a test. Because we like to blame the universe or God or whoever for these tests that we have in life. But really, it's just ourselves. We want to test to see like if we've actually grown, or if we're actually like ready to move on. I think that we do it to ourselves. So it's interesting that she's saying that she does it to herself here too, that she can pass this test. And so the question is, well, what's the test? Is it the test of I'm a great performer, that I can do this no matter what's happening in my personal life, that I'm going to go out there and put on a show because it's what I was meant to do? Or is it a test that's saying that I can pass this test, I've healed my broken heart before, and even though this one is worse than all of the other ones, because this one I actually thought I was going to marry him, even though she says it in her song 15, that she thought she was going to marry this guy someday, but I realized some bigger plans of mine. I think, like, I was definitely one of those girls where every single person that I met, I was like, I'm going to marry him. I'm going to marry him. And the one time that I didn't do it, I was like, oh, I think he's just going to be my friend, is the one that I marry. So I think that it could also be in that sense, too, that I can pass this test, I can get over this breakup, and then actually marry somebody else. Because I'm a real tough kid. I can handle my shit. Okay, it's the best. Oh, okay, it does change. Never mind. I was going to say it's the same chorus as before, but it does change, so I'm going to keep reading. They said, babe, you gotta fake it till you make it, and I did. Lights, camera, bitch, smile, in stilettos for miles. He said he'd love me for all time, but that time was cut short. Oh, it was quite short. I always thought it was cut. But that time was quite short. Breaking down, I hit the floor. All the pieces of me shattered as the crowd was chanting more. I was grinning like I'm winning. I was hitting my marks because I can do it with a broken heart. So it's interesting how she says the same thing as the first chorus, but the words are clearly different. But again, it's just going back to to Love of My Life. I don't know why I called it Legendary. But to Love of My Life, or Loss of My Life, the LOML. That the time was cut short. So let's actually go line by line of how it's different. So in the first chorus, she says, even when you want to die, and then it switches to in stilettos for miles. Then it goes, he said he'd love me all his life, to he said he'd love me for all time, but that life was too short, but that time was quite short. Breaking down, to hit the floor, and then the rest of it's the same. So I think it just goes to show, but at the beginning, she just wants to die. She wants to stay down low. But then when she's performing, she has to walk, she has to move on. So in her stilettos for miles is that, but she's not going to let herself stay down. She's going to lift herself up, get in her stilettos, and walk for miles. So even though the time was cut short, even though she feels horrible, even though she's shattered, she's not going to let it stop her. And I think that's when she was saying, I can pass this test. She's like, but I have confidence in myself. So yeah, he broke my heart. Yeah, this is shitty. Yeah, this is awful. But I'm not going to let it bring me down. I'm going to keep going. And that's basically the end of the song. The rest of it is she just repeats what she already says, but she does end it with, how does she say it? You know you're good when you can even do it with a broken heart. You know you're good, and I'm good, 'cause I'm miserable, and nobody even knows. Try and come for my job. So it's she's saying, she's proud of herself that she can hide it because she loves her job so much. So during Reputation, her career was gone, but she was starting something new with this guy. And then now it's that her relationship's falling apart, but she's doing good in her career. And so now we're going to get to that when we get into prophecy, but she just wants, like, why can't it happen at the same time? In high school, this is such a silly story, but I'm going to tell you. In high school, it felt like I could either have a guy or my best friend. So, like, and it was, like, they weren't even correlated. It just happened to be that my best friend and I would get in a fight, and then I would meet a guy and then date him for a while, and then he and I would break up, and then, like, weirdly, my best friend and I would become friends again. Like, it's not like they knew about each other or anything. It just, like, so happened to be that this is what would happen. So I would always pray that eventually I'd be able to have both a best friend and a guy. And I don't really know. Like, now that I brought this up, I don't really know if it has or has not. I think the closest would be right now, but my best friend is my husband's sister. So I don't know if that counts or not, but yeah. Okay, moving right along to track 14, The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived. I love this song because of how raw it is. You can hear her breath, and most people, I think she did get criticized for this actually, that you're not supposed to hear the breath, you're not supposed to, like, blah, blah, blah. But I think that the breath, like, adds to it. Like, she's sighing before she says, was any of it true? Like, you can feel, like, the heartache in it. So, yeah, I really love that first breath. Was any of this true? Was any of it true? Gazing at me starry-eyed. And remember, she used that word starry-eyed in LOML, saying that she wanted to play it safe instead of being starry-eyed. So here, he is starry-eyed and it wasn't true. So I think, like, that's, like, what this album is for. It's about, I actually wrote this for, at the bottom of what song is that? Number 6, But Daddy, I Love Him. I wrote it, but then I didn't say it, and I don't know why I didn't say it, but let me just, like, pull that up really quick. But while I pull it up, what I was going to say here was that this whole album, it seems to be going back and forth between constraint and freedom, and with fakeness and, like, falsehood and truth. And what I wrote here, under But Daddy, I Love Him, was that it was wildness and joy, that, like, why can't the two coincide? Because she was saying, like, that she needed to, in this song, she was saying, like, tendrils tucked into a woven braid, like, that was what's good, and the wildness wasn't good. I said joy, but I meant good, my bad. So, like, between the wildness and good, like, why can't wildness be good? And also, but I feel like good is also, like, a synonym of joy, right? Because joy is good. So yeah, like, because there's joy in wildness. So it's also, like, going back to those boundaries of, like, but how much wild is too wild? And then I wrote freedom versus choice. Oh no, I wrote freedom of choice. Can you read my handwriting? And then crisis and disgrace. So, like, why is it a disgrace? How do I say this? Why is it when there's crisis that it leads to disgrace? Why can't a crisis lead to good? And I feel like that's what she kind of gets at in that song, that there's a scandal. Okay, that's fine. She says it's pride. Pride is a funny thing, or something along those lines. That I just had the page, and then the second I drop it, here we go. It says, scandal does funny things to pride, but brings lovers closer. When we came back when the heat died down, went to my parents, and they came around. So she's saying, like, when there's a scandal, when there's a crisis, there doesn't have to be disgrace. People just have to accept you for the new you, that there are all these different versions of you. I was talking to a friend today about all the different versions of us, and how we need to find people who love us, and on all those different versions, who love us for growing, not who shame us for growing, or who get uncomfortable about our growth or who want us to stay small. That we need to find people who want to grow with us, and if they don't want to grow with us, then we have to leave them. No matter how hard, no matter how heartbroken we are, we have to leave them, because there's no room for people who don't want the best for us. Now it's just taking, like, my thoughts are just taking me to other lines about in Who's Afraid of Little Old Me, when she's saying that people try and save us because they hate us. So, like, we need to find people who actually love us, who actually want to be there for us and support us because they love us, because they love all of our different versions. Yeah, okay. Back to The Smallest Man Who Ever Lived. Was any of it true, gazing at me starry-eyed in your Jehovah's Witness suit? Who the fuck was that guy? You try to buy some pills from a friend of a friend's of mine. They just ghosted you. Now you know what it feels like. And it's so crazy because obviously this is about Matt Healy, like clearly about Matt Healy. And he goes to say, like, when they asked him about the song, like, he was like, oh, like, I was so relieved that that's all she wrote. And I'm like, this is pretty bad, my guy. Like, how horrible were you to her for you to think that this is good? Like, that she could have said something worse? Like, that's just wild to me. And obviously, like, here she's using ghosted in the colloquial term, but it's also, like, going back to, like, the whole rest of the album, how she's using, like, this ghosting, this haunting, this, like, the phantoms, like, that kind of dark imagery. And I don't even want you back. I just want to know if rusting my sparkling summer was the goal. And I don't miss what we had, but could someone give a message to the smallest man who ever lived? I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, so this next part is about her feeling caged. And it's interesting because this kind of caging is a caging, like, that's on display. Like, the way that I read this was, and I don't know where, like, it was some kind of show that I saw this. I think maybe it was, like, one of those, like, crime solving kind of shows where, like, it couldn't have been him because he was like an artist, like a installation artist, where he put himself in a glass box, like, above New York, like, in a crane, like, lifting the glass box up by the crane, so that everybody could see him. But he was still caged inside of this glass box. And I feel like that's how this comes across. So let me read it to you. It says, you hung me on your wall, stabbed me with your pushpins, in public showed me off, then sank in stoned oblivion. 'Cause once your queen had come, you'd treat her like an also ran. You didn't measure up in any measure of a man. So let's get into what this means. So obviously the first two lines, you hung me on your wall, stabbed me with your pushpins. It was like, it hurt me when you would show me off in public, but I was fine with it because I was like, maybe this could be something, you know? But then you sink in stoned oblivion. So I kind of feel like that's, like, the imagery of, like, if you throw a stone into, like, the ocean or, like, a pool or something, and it just sinks to the bottom into, like, darkness. So it's like you showed me off, but then you just faded away. You went into darkness. Like, you basically cut me off, right? I was the stone that you were showing off, and then you just threw me away like I was nothing. And then these next two lines, I was, like, just listening to it casually, I was really confused. It says, 'cause once your queen had come, you'd treat her like an also ran. So I thought that it meant, like, oh, like, he found somebody new, like, oh, his queen had come, right? That it was, like, who he actually wanted to be with, so that's why he threw her away. But now that I'm doing this, like, deep dive into it, it kind of sounds like she's calling herself his queen. Like, you were lucky to be with me, that I gave you the time of day. and you just treated me like an also-ran. Like, I'm supposed to be a queen, and an also-ran, I had to look it up because I'm like, what does that even mean? But an also-ran is just like somebody who was running a race, but they didn't come in first, second, or third. They just also ran, like, in the race. So you treat her like she's supposed to be the queen, she's supposed to be number one, but you treat her like just another competitor. Like, there's something special about her. So that's what she says. You didn't measure up in any measure of a man. And then she says the chorus again, and then this is where it's like, oh my gosh. She says, were you sent by someone who wanted me dead? Did you sleep with a gun underneath our bed? Were you writing a book? Were you a sleeper cell spy? In 50 years, will all this be declassified? And you'll confess why you did it, and I'll say good riddance, 'cause it wasn't sexy once it wasn't forbidden. And we'll continue on, but I wanted to go this by doing this line by line. So where you sent, so she's like letting her intrusive thoughts run wild, right? She's saying what was the purpose of getting with me and leading me on if it wasn't going anywhere? Like, there has to be a reason why you did what you did. And so she's thinking, like, were you trying to kill me? Like, is that the reason why you were going to get close to me and then you backed off? Like, what's going on? And then it's interesting that she uses the word our bed. So even though it was a situationship, like, did she really see him as something more? Was she just heartbroken over Joe, so she was jumping into something new and just, like, going full force into it? That's a very much Sagittarius trait. Is an all or nothing, like 0 to 100 type thing. But yeah, I don't know why she says our bed. Does she mean because they consummated the relationship? Is that what that means? I don't know. But again, with the dead gun, kind of dark imagery. Not kind of, it is very dark imagery. Were you writing a book? Were you a sleeper cell spy? So I had to look up what sleeper cell spy means. And so I just put into chat GBT, and it says that a sleeper cell spy refers to an undercover agent who has infiltrated a target organization, group, or country and remains dormant or inactive until activated by a handler or under specific circumstances. So she's saying, like, were you just trying to get close to me until someone said, like, pull the trigger and then you're going to kill me? Like, what? Like, what was this for? In 50 years, will all this be declassified and you'll confess why you did it and I'll say good riddance? And then this part, it wasn't sexy once it wasn't forbidden. So does that mean that is he the one that she was talking about and guilty as sin? You know, like, is that why it was sexy? Because it was forbidden because she was in a relationship? Or, like, why was it forbidden? But I do see that, though, because there are relationships like that where once it's not forbidden, it's not sexy anymore, and the relationship kind of loses its appeal. Because I messed this up. Because it wasn't sexy once it wasn't forbidden. I would have died for your sins. Instead, I just died inside. Again, with the dying. But she says this a lot. Dying for your sins. Not just in this song, but in multiple songs across albums. She talks about this a lot. Like dying for one's sins. And obviously the person who died for our sins was Jesus Christ. So she's saying that she's like a lamb, a sacrifice. That she doesn't mind sacrificing herself in the name of love. Instead, I just died inside, and you deserve prison, but you won't get time. You'll slide into inboxes and slip through the bars. You crashed my party in your rental car. So I circled, and you deserve prison, but you won't get time. Because she talks about time too, like how time gives her perspective and like all the good stuff about time. But then she also talks about time like in Fresh Out the Slammer, like she did her time. And here she's saying, like, you deserve to be caged. You deserve this stuff, but you're not going to put yourself in a cage because interesting. So that thought just led me to think about like the devil and like Lucifer and stuff. Like in the show Lucifer, he says that people go to hell because they're the ones that imprison themselves, that they're in this like time loop where they can't get out because they're punishing themselves. So talking about freedom and caging, do we do it to ourselves? If somebody's in prison, did they choose that, like subconsciously? I know some people do it consciously, but like I feel like throughout time, for millennia, people have been imprisoned, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's an actual jail cell, whether thinking about the OA, it's a show on Netflix. She imprisons herself within her body when she becomes blind. She chooses to be blind. Well, not that she chooses it, she accepts it. It's like a whole thing. You'd have to watch. It's about like afterlife and near-death experiences and stuff like that. But yeah, so the OA, like she gets imprisoned multiple times in multiple different ways. So like, is it a human condition to want to cage ourselves? With Taylor Swift, how she says it with her being the monster on the hill, she is caging herself, being away from us normal people, right? So is it always a choice? Now it's going to get super controversial, so forgive me, but also like sorry, not sorry kind of thing. But this was brought up in my class. So again, this is super controversial, so like trigger warning if you want to like skip ahead 30 seconds or whatever. But it was interesting that John Locke helped write the Constitution for North Carolina. And in it, he says that slaves are still under like the whites' property because it was during wartime. But there was no war. But then that led me to think, like, why wasn't there a war? If a country was coming to America and stealing children and shipping them off to Africa, you better believe that the U.S. government would be fighting for us, that there would be a war. Like, how dare somebody come to our land and steal our people? So why was there no war? So going back to this whole thought process of, did they choose it? Obviously not willingly, obviously not consciously, but was there like a soul contract of some sort? Where it was a choice to be a slave for hundreds of years as like a race? It's crazy to think about, no? Because why wasn't there a war? Why did no one fight back? Or we never even hear of of rescue missions. You know? People are like, what, like if, especially like I read, I can't pronounce his name right now, but I've talked about him in other episodes of Grounded Spirits, like the normal one, not this like special edition part, but I'll try to find it and I'll put it like on Instagram or something. But anyway, this slave, he was the son of the king of his tribe. And he had a bad feeling that day. He didn't even want to go out to play with the rest of the kids, but then they started calling him names. They were like, no, just come on, come play with us, come play with us. And so he did, and then sure enough, they got captured. But I'm like, if you're the king of your tribe, you have resources. He talks about that his dad had slaves. And he would say like how well the slaves were treated, that they were given everything that they could want. They just had to serve the king. But that they had food, they had shelter, that they could do, yeah. They were still treated with decency. So if his dad had the means, why wouldn't he go and try to get him, try to put together a crew to go find his son? You know? All right, I digress with that. So back to Taylor Swift. And you deserve prison, but you won't get time. So she's saying you deserve to put yourself, to be in a cage, but you're not going to do it because you're so unaware that you don't feel guilt, you don't feel shame, you don't fear. And those three things are the ones that put us in cages. So she's saying in a negative way that you should have game. I was mixing together guilt and shame. You should have those two, is what she's saying. But that you won't get time. Instead, you'll slide into inboxes, so you'll keep DMing people and you'll slip through the bars. And here she's talking about prison, right? So it's like slipping through the bars, like you can just slide out. You wouldn't actually get time in that way. But then it's also like slip through bars, as in like go into bars where you drink, like those kinds of bars, and so you'll slip in and out of them, like picking up girls. You crashed my party and your rental car. Okay, so here, that I'd never noticed that before. You crashed my party, so that's how they met probably. Because you were slipping in through the bars, or you slipped into my bar, into my party. And your rental car, so you crashed your rental car. You said normal girls were boring, but you were gone by the morning. You kicked out the stage lights, but you're still performing. So here I wrote like fake. So she's calling him fake. She doesn't want anything to do with him because he's fake. He's just performing. He's putting on a show, and nothing is real. And it's kind of answering her question that she posed at the very first line of this song. Was any of it true? And then over here, she's saying, like, basically no. Like, he was performing the entire time. And in plain sight you hid, but you are what you did. And I'll never forget you. Sorry. And I will forget you, but I'll never forgive the smallest man who ever lived. Now on to Alchemy. I love this song. This is one of my favorites, so I'm so excited to get into it. It starts off by saying, this happens once every few lifetimes. These chemicals hit me like white wine. So I love that because lifetimes, it makes it sound like she believes in reincarnation, where every few lifetimes you're going to meet somebody that just hits you in like the best way possible, that just excite you, that make you feel alive, that it's like this, like, I guess twin flame is the word that's coming to mind, but this kind of flame that isn't normal, but is so exhilarating. And then here we go again with the caging. The first verse goes, what if I told you I'm back? The hospital was a drag, worst sleep I ever had. I circled you on a map. I haven't come around in so long, but I'm coming back so strong. So the way that it makes it seem is that she was in the hospital, she was broken, right? How she's been talking about in the last few songs, that she was so broken that she had to go to the hospital for it. Whether that's true or not, it's kind of like she had to go and get peace back together. But in that healing phase, it's a cage. That's what she said, that the hospital was a drag, the worst sleep she ever had, that she hated it there. She hated needing to heal, that she couldn't get out of bed. So like I said, whether it's a real hospital or not, when you can't get out of bed because you're that broken, it feels like a cage. So now she's saying, what if I told you I'm back, and I'm coming back so strong? Like it's saying, like, yeah, like I'm healed now. And just to talk about the definition of alchemy, it just means transformation. It means to undergo a process to change one thing to another. The alchemist of the olden times were people who were trying to turn lead into gold. But one could say that we are the lead that we're trying to change into gold the gold would be divine. In her song, not Afterglow, is it Daylight? It's in Lover, and she says that she thought that love was red, from the song Red, the album Red as well, but that it's golden. And I think that's kind of what she's getting at here too, that the alchemy is this gold that needs to be treasured and cherished. Then she goes on to say, so when I touch down, call the amateurs and cut them from the team. So I love these are football references. So this is very clearly about Travis. So when I touch down, it could mean a touchdown with football, but here she's saying when I touch down, when I land, so it could be in an airplane, or when I get back on my feet, when I come back, she was saying, I'm coming back so strong, to call the amateurs and cut them from the team, that she doesn't want anybody who's fake. She's done with the fakeness. Give me the real players, the first string. Those are the only people that she wants, the people who are going to actually be there for her and actually take her to where she wants to go. Ditch the clowns and get the crown, baby. She talks about the crown and I think it's a reputation that they took the crown, but I'll be all right. And then in Speak Now, Taylor's version, Songs from the Vault, she has a song about the castles are crumbling. So here she's saying ditch the clowns, people who are just clowning around, who are just those jokesters that are making her cry that she talked about a couple of songs ago. She's saying ditch them and get the crown, baby, 'cause I'm the one to beat, 'cause the sign on your heart said it's still reserved for me. Honestly, who are we to fight the alchemy? So isn't that cute? The sign on your heart said it's so reserved for me. So it's as if it was a real reserved sign. You know how they have those on chairs and stuff, if it's reserved, or tables. And so she's saying that it's been sitting there this whole time, and now that they're here, they're together, why are we going to fight this alchemy? We belong together. Why are we going to fight this chemical change? Let's just allow the change to change us. So isn't that so beautiful? I forgot to mention in the first verse how she says, I circled you on a map. I haven't come around in so long, but I'm coming back so strong. It's she has a goal. She knows where she's going, and she's not going to let anybody else stop her. And this is again with that Sagittarius sun. They're very they're arrows, right? That once they made up their mind, there's no going back, and they're going to achieve their goals. So now going on to the second chorus. Hey you, what if I told you we're cool? That child's play back in school is forgiven under my rule. I haven't come around in so long, but I'm making a comeback to where I belong. And I love that, right? That she knows where she belongs. She knows that she belongs in her castle with her prince, with her crown. And it's going to be under her rule that a child's play back in school is forgiven. And I'm not quite sure what she means by that. But I guess something happened, because she says, what if I told you we're cool? That child's play back in school is forgiven under my rule. So there was something that needed to be forgiven, but that they're cool now, because now that she's back in command, back ruling, where she belongs, it's her comeback. And so yeah, then she goes through the chorus again. Then she says, these blokes warm the benches, and blokes is just British for a guy. So I think she's saying that with Joe, he was just warming the bench, and now that he's he's a bench warmer so that Travis could come in and be on this winning streak. So then she's asking Travis why are we on this winning streak? Thinking that it's him that is the one that's allowing her to quote unquote win this time around, that it's because of him, not because of her. And his response is that it's heroin, the drug. So she thinks that he's talking about the drug, oh, ha, 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 it's just because I'm on drugs, that's why I'm winning. but then he says it's because but this time with an E. So heroine with an E is a girl hero. So he like bringing it back. He's like, right back at you, babe, kind of thing, that like we're on this winning streak together because of you, because you're incredible and I support you. So it's like really beautiful to see it in this way that yeah, like, because then the next line is, because the sign on your heart says it's still reserved for me. So honestly, who are we to fight the alchemy? That like that we belong together. And she said that in the last verse too, right? Like, I had to making my comeback to where I belong. I belong in a relationship, a loving relationship, one that's going to allow me to grow and it's going to help me grow. And here she's saying that she found it, that we're on this winning streak because of heroin, but this time with an E, that it's not drugs. It's just the chemicals that naturally occur when two soulmates collide. Shirts off, and your friends lift you up over their heads. Beer sticking to the floor, cheers chanting 'cause they said there was no chance, trying to be the greatest in the league. Where's the trophy? He just comes running over to me. So she's like, again, like they're on this winning streak. The shirts are off. The friends are lifting him up. Like they're celebrating, right? They're on this winning streak. There's beer sticking to the floor, chanting 'cause they said. So they're chanting. They're excited. There's beer everywhere because at sporting events, people throw their beers up in excitement. And here's what the cheers chanted 'cause they said, there was no chance, trying to be the greatest in the league. Where's the trophy? And saying like they didn't think that they could win because of how the season was going. So in Taylor's case, that I don't know Travis's dating history, like how long ago did he break up with his last girl before going with Taylor, but she's saying that there's no chance, trying to be the greatest in the league. Where's the trophy? So they didn't think that they were going to win, but they actually did win. And so she's asking like, where's the trophy? But she's saying that Travis doesn't care about the trophy because he's running over to me. That he doesn't care about the material. He doesn't care about the money or the fame or the wealth. He just wants her. He just loves her. Isn't that so beautiful? Like, I want to cry. Like, that's just so precious, because in Reputation, she says that about Joe, that you must love me for me because I'm at my lowest of my low. Like, I don't have anything and you still love me. So that's how I know that it's real. But this is going to sound bad, but I'm going to say it anyway, that I think that he liked her down because then they were like at the same level. But when she started gaining her strength and coming back up, he didn't like that. He didn't want to grow with her. So that's why it didn't end up working out. Whereas with Travis, he not only loves her at her best, but he's growing with her, and he's like shining a light on her for her to grow even more. It's like if she's a little plant and he's taking care of her and watering her and making sure she has all the sunlight. And so it's just so cute. Then she does the chorus again. She says that part again about the blokes and the heroin. And then she ends the song with, this happens once every few lifetimes. These chemicals hit me like white wine. That, like, yeah, who are we to fight the alchemy? Like, we belong together. And we're going to help each other grow. And we're going to be happy in our sunshine, in our castle, that now that we have the crown. So beautiful. So that is it for this episode. But before we close, I wanted to point out that obviously Taylor's favorite number is 13. I think any Taylor Swift fan would know that. But no one ever talks about track 13. Everybody's talking about track 5, like, oh yeah, track 5 is the best one of every album because it's the saddest of most albums. And then I saw somebody on Threads talking about that actually it's track 9 who deserves like the glory. And it's true. They listed out all of the track 9s, and 100% those are all my favorites. But like I said, no one talks about track 13. I just looked through all of her albums, and track 13 is the one that's closest to her heart. is the one that embodies her the most. So for instance, like Marjorie, in, is it Folklore or Evermore? Like they're so close together, I always forget what song's on what album, but that's the one about her grandmother. And so of course it had to be track 13. Also the Lucky One, is that in Fearless? That one's also track 13. I just looked at it, but I guess I should actually like go look at it again so I could actually tell you exactly. But in this one, it was, I Can Do It With a Broken Heart. So of course that's the one that's closest to her heart. So this is in no particular order, but in 1989, it's Clean. Wow. Oh, in Red, I said it was Fearless, my bad. So in Red, it's the Lucky One. So get it like Lucky 13. In Fearless, it's Change. Okay. On Folklore, it's Epiphany. Yeah, that makes sense. Midnight's Mastermind. Oh my gosh, that makes so much sense. I don't know if I said this already, but Aquariuses are known for masterminds. So that also proves my point that she's an Aquarius rising who was done pretending that she's not a mastermind. Speak Now, Last Kiss. Oh, I love that song. Evermore is Marjorie, like I said. Lover, False God. Interesting. Reputation, This Is Why We Can't Have Nice Things. Okay. Taylor Swift, her first album, It's Invisible. So, yeah, looking at all of them, yeah, track 13 is something special to her. Whether we know why it's special to her or not, it's something interesting to think about. So yeah, that is all I got for you tonight. We are slowly but surely getting through all of them. I am so excited that we're almost done with this first half, because this is supposed to be like the original album for the Tortured Poets Department. And some people have been saying that the first album, like so 1 through 16, is the Tortured Poets Department, and then the second album is the anthology. And if I were to choose between the first album and the second one, I would choose the second one, hands down. I love those songs so much more than the first one. Like the first ones were good, and actually after going through it, the way that we've been doing it here, I've learned to appreciate them more and love them more, but my heart is with the latter half. So I'm really excited to get to those next time. I'll see you then. Bye, everybody.